Καλημέρα σας. My name is Alexia Hatzimichali. I'm heading the Athens office of Watson, Farley and Williams. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Capital Link for inviting me to moderate one of the most interesting panels that we have today, because we are going to discuss how to combine tradition with innovation, and also the panel will share its views on and the vision about the future. So I would like to introduce you to Alex Hadjipateras, who is the Executive Vice President of Business Development of Dorian LPG, John Dragnis, who is the CEO of Goldenport Group, Suzanna Laskaridis, who is the CEO of Lavinia Corporation. I cannot see who is, Ioanna Procopiou, who is the CEO of Prominence Maritime, and last but not least, Johannes Martinez, who is the founder and CEO of the Signal Group. So this panel consists of the next generation of ship owners. And what we have here today is essentially a panel of young individuals that already have a leading role in the industry's next steps into the future. And I would like to ask Ioanna, if I may, as the next generation, how do you see your role in the family business?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having us and organizing, Nicola and Olga. I find that being part of the second generation is a wonderful thing. It has lots of benefits, but it also carries a lot of responsibilities with it. One needs to be very mindful that the business they're entering is someone else's baby. The generation before us developed it and made it what it is today with all its strengths and perhaps some shortcomings. On the other hand, when you are a youngster entering the workforce, you have all these aspirations of doing meaningful and creative work. And each of us spends so much time at work, so we need to find something to do that is fulfilling. We need to enjoy it and to use our talents and being creative. And there's an extra hurdle when you are of the next generation. You have this sense that you need to prove yourself, and you weren't just handed a position, and you had to earn it. And there are instances where even perhaps unwillingly your fellow co-workers might size you up or scrutinize your moves or even compare you to the previous generation. And this setting can be a little bit intimidating. So it's hard to find a role that is fitting. So from my side, when I entered the business, I wanted to do something that would allow me to feel useful, be creative, and have a good learning curve. So initially, it was quite hard to locate a position that would help me to achieve those goals. A few years down the line, though, an opening in a position that was quite interesting occurred. It was the S&P and projects, and the gentleman was leaving, and I was given the opportunity to take over that role. And I decided to go ahead. I left everything that I was doing. It was in the middle of the summer. I came back to Athens to do the handover, and that's what I did for the next 2 years, and I was very fortunate to be able to work very close with my father, from whom I learned a lot. And after a couple of years passed, I wanted to expand my scope outside the commercial side and to see more of the role of what the whole shipping cycle is. So I decided to set up a small bulk carrier company with 2 ships, and this would allow me to follow the day-to-day of 2 ships, which is basically into a smaller scale of what a large company does. And I also wanted to have the responsibility of my own decisions. And that's what I did until the circumstances had it that I was promoted to heading all of our dry bulk operations, which I do until today. But in concluding, I want to stress that in order to succeed in what you're doing, you need to have the trust of the previous generation. They need to allow you to fail in order to learn from your mistakes, and they need you you need to have the space and the necessary tools to grow. And I have to say I've been fortunate enough to have all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ioanna, for sharing with us your personal experience. Perhaps someone else from the panel Johannes Martinos.
I guess Ioanna covered almost everything that the second generation person has in mind. Indeed, it's a huge opportunity when you're born into a situation where a lot of things are handed to you, starting from a very good education, but also not just a traditional education, but a business education. Then you have a responsibility to do something with that. You can choose to do that within the confines of the family business, or you can start something new like Ioanna did. I think both are excellent choices. And the best one depends really on the special circumstances of everyone. You have families that, let's say, the founder is more controlling than in other families. You have families where there are many siblings and cousins. I've seen Greek shipping companies with like 20 family members in them. So certainly in such a situation, it's harder, let's say, to find a role. So I think, we should take responsibility for our own actions. We are definitely pampered from a young age and given a lot of opportunities. But then we have to go out there in the world and prove that the quality of decision-making that we can bring to the table is to the level, let's say, that will make you a successful person. And I'll take it one step further as well. I think I also admire people that have, let's say, grown up in a certain industry and then have chosen to follow a different career outside the industry. So I think it's more of an amazing option. When we time charter ships, we love having options to be able to extend them and so on. And all of us who have done this in the past recognize there's a lot of value and optionality. And really, a family like a traditional Greek shipping family that has been very successful in shipping really provides you a lot of optionality. And it can be a little bit intimidating to see what you're going to do with that optionality. But I think, as I see many of my friends taking advantage of this optionality, I see some interesting things emerging and coming out of it.
Thank you very much. You are both considered entrepreneurs because you've started your own business. Suzanna, some people argue that innovation and tradition are opposites. How does your company navigate between innovation and tradition?
Thank you, Alexia. Thank you, Alexia, for the question. Thank you for having me today as well on this panel. As mentioned earlier, we are also a second generation in our company, and we come from a company that specialized in a very niche and very old type of fleet, which is extremely different than what we currently manage. So we had refrigerated cargo vessels, and we moved into bulk carriers in 2010, where we have currently now a very young fleet. So we were, in the back of our minds, the reefer fleet would slowly fade away, and this didn't happen, definitely not. It proved to be an extremely resilient fleet and extremely profitable as well. So we found ourselves managing a very old and very young fleet concurrently. In my mind, innovation by default is growth. It comes after growth, and growth cannot come without traditional values. So I think there's been a, let's say, misunderstanding that tradition sometimes means conservatism that does actually hinder innovation, whereas I think one is complementary of the other. And our company was based for many years on a very traditional type of carriage, which was a carriage of perishable goods that revolved around cultivating relationships for many, many years and developing relationships as well. And having traditional values such as doing business honorably, where your word is your bond, is something that only follows innovation. And it doesn't mean anything basically without having tradition to follow, having a fully digitalized and fully modern fleet as well. So I think that fully embracing all innovations that appear now wouldn't mean much if we didn't have the traditional values that are passed on from the previous generations.
Thank you, Susanna. I don't know, perhaps Alex, would you like to comment on that, or if you have anything to add?
Thank you, Alexia, and thank you, Nicholas. In my case, or in our company, for us, tradition also means a very close connection to the seafarer, which I think was extremely important during COVID and all the challenges that we face with crew changes. And also to the earlier presentation, to George's point on all the decarbonization drive and all the new fuels and alternatives that we're looking at, I think that also having that link to the sea and the ship to shore is so important. So as we look at some of the digital, and I know we'll discuss it more later, I think measurement and looking at how we can adapt to these changing regulations, we need that link between shore and sea.
Thank you, Alex. Yanni Dragni, how do you facilitate innovative ideas in your company? How do you shift a culture of yes but to a culture of yes and?
Kalimera, Alexia. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I see innovation as obviously welcoming, evaluating, and implementing change in your organization. And the only way to do that is really immerse and involve yourself into those projects that you're trying to implement. It's easy always, to just bring new ideas and just talk about them and then just try to delegate those processes, but that almost never works. So it's very important that you involve yourself, you involve your best people in it, the actual people that really run your company, and because these are the people that are going to implement those changes in the organization. Just to give an example, I mean, a couple of years ago when the energy efficiency, let's say, department started to become more important, you were trying to measure our energy efficiency, the speed consumption of the vessels, and potentially that will lead to the MRV monitoring, and then obviously to CO2 accounting that is coming. We are relatively a time charter company, and our operations department didn't really understand why should we do that, since basically we're not really immediately financially affected by that, let's say, trying to make the vessel as most efficient as possible. But in time, if you involve the people, you involve your operations department, you explain to them that by saving 1 ton or 2 tons or even more, you become the vessel more attractive in due course, and your charters are going to appreciate that. And that, of course, then will now it becomes even more and more relevant, because obviously managing your energy is becoming one of the most important issues in the industry. Another way in order to implement innovation and change in the organization is being open enough in order to work, for example, with startups, that they bring new ideas to the company, and then you have to sit down with them, you have to evaluate the ideas. Obviously, there are going to be a few lemons, not everything is going to work. There's going to be a lot of ideas out there, but you have to see what works for you and try to adopt that. You have to provide feedback to those companies and get ideas in exchange. And then maybe you can invest them, you can invest in some of them, you can help them grow, and obviously collaborating with your best people, then you can improve and effect change. So overall, I think involving yourself and involving really understanding what you want to achieve and clearly communicating that fact.
Thank you, Jan. Yes, the personal involvement is the secret. And thank you also for the story and the example. Anyone else from the panel that would like to add something? Perhaps Ioanna, if you have...
Yanni covered a lot of things, but I will say a little bit what happens in our company, because generally we try to evolve and to grow. So in that setting, we like to hear new ideas, and very often we like to hear the ideas of the people already working in the company, because they have the best knowledge of what the problems really are. So I will always the door's always open for new ideas, but provided that the person suggesting these ideas has done their homework, has demonstrated how this, whatever they're suggesting is applicable to us, how much is it going to cost, what we expect to get out of it, how are we going to implement it, etc. So this is a two-way street, because the employee working for you is suggesting the idea feels empowered when you actually implement something that has been suggested. And also the company benefits from it, since the person has done their homework and it seems that it's a viable option. So when any idea that comes up that satisfies these criteria, we always implement. So we're always open for suggestions.
Thank you, Ioanna. And now a difficult question for Johannes Martinos. Innovation requires investment. How can you make it worth it? How can a shipping company ensure that it will be able to recover its money?
Ensure is a strong word, but I'll try to give an answer. So when I was in Thenamaris, which is our family business, in 2007 we started a large project with DNV to do energy management. So DNV came and created a list of about 100 recommendations of things that we could do on board our fleet in order to save money on fuel and benefit the environment. At the time, benefiting the environment was not as high in the list, so we were more focused on the saving money part. And we started implementing one by one all of these projects. And at the time, it was a pretty aggressive move because we invested $20 million in actually implementing all these 100 projects. And these were ranging from installing, let's say, variable frequency drives on the circulation pumps of the main engine, but it also included changing all the lighting on board all the ships to LED lights. It included things like installing energy-saving devices with, in front of the propeller, like a MEVIS duct. So, the list was huge, and the bill started piling up. And after I had spent the $20 million on the project, some people in the company were looking at me as if I was kind of like too aggressive, let's say, about it. So then we set up a mechanism to track how much we're going to save from this. And after after we had finished with all the installations and so on, we actually computed that the saving was in the order of 10 million a year when the fuel prices were relatively high. So there are not many investments that you can make that give you such a return. Actually, I was told that recently they turned off the counter that was measuring the money that had been saved from this project because it went over $100 million, and they said, okay, it's a success. So, in some ways, was that innovation or not? It's borderline innovation. It's not true innovation. We didn't invent a MEVIS duct. We didn't invent variable frequency drives, but we were innovative enough, let's say, to use them. And I think that's kind of the first step that shipping companies should make. Now, if you want to take it a step beyond that, you can actually, try to innovate by being one of the first ships to burn LNG, and that's an expensive game, and it's a game that, in the beginning, might play out very well, and then LNG prices go up, and it doesn't work that well. So, there are certain innovations which are less certain. And finally, the innovations of the kind that I'm trying to work on now, which have to do, let's say, with software for commercial management, which take a lot longer to prove if this is something that's going to work. It takes a lot higher quality decision making, and you need to get the strategy and hit the nail right on the head and get the strategy right. But if you do, you can have a pretty big payout. The problem is you don't know what the case is going to be. Maybe it will take, in my case, I'm now, waiting for another 5 to 10 years to know if what we are doing has worked. But if I look at some other technology companies in the space, for example, you might have heard of IMOS, which is a voyage management tool created by Vessel Nautical. They started 20 years ago, and it took them 20 years, but they just raised money at $1 billion valuation, is rumored in the market. They raised $200 million. So that is a relatively successful business. maybe not as successful as a big shipping company that has hit the nail on the head in terms of buying 20 container ships 3 years ago. But in some ways, it's very creative and can be also financially rewarding. And then, of course, there are some companies that we have never heard of because they tried, they failed. We don't know about them necessarily, or there are some famous examples, maybe like, what was the name of this company? Open Seas or something like that. I don't remember what it was. That tried to do chartering online and disintermediate the brokers. That was a big mistake. They lost $40 million. So, the answer is, I think the short answer is if you know what you're doing, you can make a lot of money. If you don't know what you're doing, you can lose a lot of money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your views and for this excellent example. Alex, about technology. The pandemic has expedited the need for radical changes in the way we do business. We have rapidly moved to the let's get digital age in order to survive. Technology has ensured business continuity under a new perspective. How has your company embraced technological innovation?
So thank you, Alexia. I think last year we really embraced sort of a hybrid model in terms of how we visited the vessels virtually, be it through trainings or audits. Even we've done 10 scrubber installations in China without ever sending somebody to the shipyard there. We're working just completely remotely with a local team there. But also on technology in terms of a solution for the future, I think to the point about innovation, it's so exciting that there's much more focus on the tech space in shipping, be it from venture capital and from funds looking to sort of unlock what has been a space maybe that's been underdeveloped. And there are many new companies emerging there, and we'll definitely see some consolidation, but I think it just speaks to the fact that we, again, need to invest in technology as a bridge to hit a lot of these targets. And I think also talking about innovation, and we have a lot of small, medium-sized companies in the shipping space, we'll have to look at open innovation and be very sort of embracive of a partnership-type model, because the reality is these targets are enormously difficult to hit. And without some sort of open innovation and partnership, and not everyone can be like Maersk, we will have to work together, which I think historically has been somewhat a bit of a fiefdom, but if we embrace that attitude, it will be very beneficial as we go forward.
Thank you, Alex. Yanni Dragni, if you want to share your experience and tell us, can a company's ownership structure affect innovation in shipping? Does it make a difference if you go public or stay private? What is your experience?
Well, we had some experience listing part of our company in London back in 2006, and then privatizing again in 2016. Back then, ESG and the environmental agenda of today wasn't obviously as high up in the agenda, but certain issues, for example, does affect the way that management can think about the business. For example, back then, it was all about pure play companies, and it was all about being very specific to what you do and being very specialized in one specific sector. Even certain areas of that, for example, being a Cape-size player purely. Now we have seen, obviously, and as we knew back then, that having a diversified fleet can help you much better weather the shipping cycles. Today, also, of course, this perception has changed, and diversified companies are very much, let's say, understood to be able to weather the shipping cycles, but also, focusing on one sector for certain successful companies can make them grow bigger and better. Regarding innovation, it's all about management and the alignment of shareholder interests and management. So it's relatively irrelevant if it's a public or a private company. A public company can, let's say, for example, have to hit certain more short-term targets at times. So they do have to show real progress, quarter by quarter, year by year. A private company can set longer-term targets as long as they are realistic targets and they are well thought about. There's a flip side to that point. You know, a private company can, for example, become lazy if they are successful in playing the shipping cycles. For example, Ioannis given one said if you bought a few container vessels 3 years ago and that's it, you know, you've done amazingly well. But that is not really innovation. You just timed the market well. You know, COVID happened and then we enjoyed a great container market. That didn't bring any real change to the table. So basically, I think it's relevant, but ESG and certain environmental targets should not become just a tick-the-box exercise. They should really, and obviously targets evolve through time. Is maybe what you thought was the best 2 years ago will not be the best, and you have to create that ability to maneuver within time. But I think at the end of the day, it's about management, about the commitment of management and how open they are to new ideas and bringing them into the organization.
Thank you, Yanni. Alex, do you agree with Yanni's views? Your company is listed in the US. How has this affected your strategy? And if you can tell us about the strategy for the future and what are the trends to be watching in your market?
I think that the point on diversification is very interesting, but in our case, just speaking from personal experience, we are a pure play platform, and it's given us a window to visit charterers, have a much bigger sort of deck of cards to sit at the table with, have a young fleet, and you know, we have navigated through difficult cycles as well. One of the ways we try and manage that is through a hedge chartering strategy, so we're never fully spot. But when you do have a big fleet, it can be challenging there because you inevitably are long on your spot shipping. We have a pool that we operate with Japanese partners, which is also a way for us to manage some COAs. But no, I think that it's difficult, can't really speak about the future, but it's been a bit of a roller coaster, and we've been in difficult periods in the public space. We're $1 billion valuation, and then we're $500 million valuation, and you want to make sure that you get enough coverage from analysts, and if you're too small, there's only a certain amount of companies analysts can cover. So I think the story, you know, it's still to be, there's no ending yet, but from a purely kind of size perspective, it's afforded us the ability to be a leading player in the space and to ride the cycles quite well. It's given us also a transparency and openness to some US institutional investors. Of course, you have quarterly targets and you have to manage that. And I think on the point of innovation too, maybe one idea I would have in a public company like that is you have to sort of set up a small kind of a bit more rebellious group inside to look at innovation, or a small team, and then have them report back up. But as Yanni said, you know, you need that alignment of management interests, and you need to allow people to kind of take risk and do that by themselves. But it can obviously pay off in the future if it's successful. So I think, you know, I respect Yanni's opinion, and in our experience, it's been so far positive, but you know, let's see.
Thank you, Alex. You are both embracing innovation. Suzanna, the ESG is a hot topic. There is a lot of discussion about the importance of ESG. How confident are you that the industry will meet ESG standards over the next decade? What are the major barriers to achieving the results needed?
Firstly, I think that we should start by pointing out that only recently have uniform standards and uniform reporting standards started to appear. So we are still quite far off because everybody has sort of been doing whatever they believe to be compliant. So this is an issue in itself. Until uniform standards are set, then we don't really have something to look forward to. And you know, ESGs and the overall concept of sustainability are commonly thought to be about the environment, whereas we know that, you know, it's only one of the 3 pillars. And it's very much talked about in the maritime industry, whereas it's a concept that applies to all industries, steel industry, energy industry. However, the maritime industry is actually much better prepared than other industries, considering that it has very strong international regulations already in place. Mostly on the environmental side, the investments needed are very large, so we need to stop throwing the funding ball from one to the other, who will be doing the funding, and actually start looking at the bigger picture. And another thing that I think will hinder how this will go forward is that the fact that the S and the G side, the social and the government side, haven't yet been able to be correlated into financial figures in order for them to attract finance for. So, for example, we can have specific figures and data when it comes to employee turnovers or education structures, but this actually can't be translated, let's say, into financial figures. So until that happens, then we can't attract finance for all of the three pillars. On the other hand, I do believe that the ESGs are here to stay. I think we should look at them mostly as a code of conduct that will allow us to look into more responsible consumption and production, rather than simple reporting standards that we have to comply with. So yes, it will take time, but shipping has proven time and time again to be adaptable. I think it will do so again, and whatever standards are set, I think they will be easily met by shipping overall.
Thank you, Suzanna. Does anyone else want to comment on that? And I'm a bit conscious about the time, because I cannot see the time now. No. Am I going? Is anyone?
No, it's shut down.
It stopped. But I thought we had some more time, so I don't know why.
No, we do.
I have one more question for the panel, if we have time. Telia. So, question to Johannes Martinos, and for the rest of the panel to comment as well, if there is time. How can Greek shipping maintain its dominance in the global maritime industry in the future? What skills do you consider are essential towards that end?
You give me all the difficult questions.
It's true.
The others are difficult too, but at least they are difficult for me. But maybe, I think one of the things that's really important in Greek shipping, and that has been really important and has helped us build this amazing ecosystem that we have here in the country, is that it's one of the few industries in Greece that have had a stable tax framework. So, maintaining that is essential, I think, as a base, let's say, to being able to do even more amazing things. But besides that, what I'm noticing lately is that you have an incredible ecosystem of ancillary services that are also flourishing in the Greek ecosystem, and that started earlier with people, let's say, supplying ships out of Piraeus, or making, let's say, ropes for the ship instead of importing them. We saw some big companies, let's say, come out of this space, which was like more hardware-oriented and more practical companies. But then as time went by, the services started developing into more abstract services, like, for example, the whole scene with broking in the Greek ecosystem has really flourished. You see amazing companies in the broking space. They're increasingly competing with international broking companies that we used to, admire from afar. And now the performance of the Greek companies are, close, better, the same, depending on the, on a company-by-company basis. But I find that fascinating. Similarly, you see other services like outsourced technical management, or you see companies that do commercial management for ships. And all of these things are, let's say, traditional shipping plays that Greece is increasingly becoming better at. And the ability to understand how these models work and have complementary businesses which are not as capital intensive in the Greek shipping domain, I think, creates more stability, creates more completeness, let's say, in our ecosystem. And in addition to that, and one field that I'm excited to personally support as well, because it's, I think sometimes the people, let's say, in society that have, let's say, some privileges should support innovation, the arts, and other things. And the equivalent of doing that in shipping, I think, is to support startups, as Ioannis was saying also earlier. We see some companies, the Harbor Lab has set up a kiosk outside. I was sitting next to the CEO of Irma First. All these companies started, some of them started recently, some started a while back. I see also Roberto in the audience that runs Deep Sea. All these companies are onto something. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be, a race with companies that are competing from the non-Greek ecosystem. But I think we have some pretty good players on our team, and that's going to, help create a more complete Greek ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you for closing a very positive note. Anyone else perhaps who wants to add something? We have 3 minutes. Ioanna, perhaps, or?
We are going back to what Yannis said about the Greek shipping. We are very fortunate to live in a country that has a huge tradition in shipping of more than 4,000 years, and that has developed over the years, and it's due to the fact that Greeks are by nature adaptable and risk takers as well. But in order to maintain this, we need regulatory framework stability, which is something that we see very often being attacked. But I believe that Europe is slowly seeing the value of shipping and how important it is to remain independent and not to be lost due to failed policies to countries in the Far East or the Middle East. And if anything good has come out of the war is that it has shown how important energy independence is, and the only way that you can achieve this energy independence is through shipping. And I think this will help also form policies that will keep shipping to where it is at the moment and not be lost, like we lost our shipbuilding to the Far East, and also the US lost its ship owning industry as well. So I think there is a way, we have a far way to go, but we're going towards the right direction.
Thank you, Ioanna. We have approximately 2 minutes for anyone in the audience that would like to ask questions. Nope. I cannot see anyone. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.